to our sixth conversation with G&G, and on today's episode we're talking about carer wellness and self-care, and we're joined today by Dr. Dhanya Nambiar, the visionary founder of Prana Ayurveda, where she's actually endeavouring to guide individuals towards their true state of wellness in mind, body and spirit through the principles of holistic medicine. She's got a background spanning over 15 years in healthcare, and she has initially pursued a career as a biomedical engineer before embarking on a journey in public health, specialising in mental health and addiction. But despite all of her extensive academic and professional achievements, she found herself grappling with unresolved health issues that conventional approaches just failed to address in a holistic and empowering manner. So through Prana Ayurveda, Dr. Nambiar endeavours to empower individuals to reclaim agency over their health, offering a sanctuary where ancient wisdom and modern science converge and foster lasting vitality and balance. Welcome, Dhanya.
Thank you. I feel so talked up right now. But thank you so much for having me, the three of you. It's so nice to be here today.
Thanks for being with us. That's a very impressive career that you've got there.
I hope so.
I think it's always great too, isn't it, when someone's got a personal experience that backs up what they do professionally, because as patients or clients, we come into healthcare professionals and it feels so much better when they have that understanding because they've lived it. So I think that's something that's really powerful about what you do.
Yeah, and when I look back now, at the time it was a huge inconvenience, and I thought, God, I'm a smart person, I come from a science background and I can't figure out what's going on with me. I think what I learned even back then was one of the things that we aren't taught very well. And what really appealed to me about holistic medicine is we think we can compartmentalize our health. This is the greatest fallacy of modern medicine. I see a lung specialist, I see a gastrointestinal specialist, I see someone for my skin. Nobody talks to each other. So one person's just looking at your lungs, but everything is connected. And many of the people I work with, they come in for one thing, and then we figure out that the real problem lies somewhere completely different.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened to me. My issues were not gut related. They were more hormonal, skin, and I had a lot of trouble sleeping. And I would never have guessed that underlying it all was a gut issue, or that the gut was what needed to be fixed, and all the other stuff just goes away all by itself. No effort required.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. Tell us more about that. We're intrigued.
Yeah, so basically what happened to me is, so I'll give you the, when I read a good book, I always think, I like the book where the first chapter is like the pivotal moment. And then they give you the backstory and they build back up to it. So I'll give you my pivotal moment. I was walking through a park after work one day. This would have been like 8 years ago. So I worked at the Alfred, and so you walk through Faulkner Park. And I was walking that way to go to childcare to pick my daughter up. It had been a stressful day. I was doing my fellowship and I had come out of a really tough meeting. There'd been a few like this, but this is the rigors of academic life, and I knew that. But I was walking through the park and I started to feel like racing thoughts, and my heart started beating really fast. And I realized that I was going to black out. I felt really faint. So fortunately, there are lots of benches along the way. So I sat at a bench, and, I come from a background in mental health and addiction research. So it's like, okay, head between the knees, breathe, calm down. I've been doing yoga a long time. And eventually I sort of calmed down enough to get up, because I had to go and pick my daughter up. And life goes on, right? When you're a mom, there's no stopping. But as I walked through the park, I started to realize that what had been a little bit of bloating for many years, and then, I'd always had very sensitive skin. I had eczema as a child, and then I had acne as an adult, and it always had been a bit of an issue for me. And then I realized that when I was trying to fall pregnant, I had some hormonal imbalance, nothing that was diagnosed. I never got a diagnosis for anything. All the blood tests were normal. But I always had this funny, nothing felt settled for me. And then now I'm developing this, what feels like the beginnings of anxiety. And I was walking and I was like, you know what? I've been doing all the things, trying the pill, getting on antibiotics, just doing a blood test every time I felt really lousy, and then forgetting about it. It's really time to get on top of things. And at that point, because of my work in addiction, I had done a lot of interviews with people who are in various stages of chronic disease and addiction. And I knew that if I went to my GP, I would probably get some combination of like a mental health plan plus, and that would be the path. I just wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to be diagnosed and go into taking medication. And I'm not saying that because it's a problem or it's not appropriate for everybody. I wasn't there yet. And because I've been doing yoga for a long time, I thought, I know there are other ways. So a couple of months later, honestly, like I just kind of put it out there. I said, you know what? I'm looking for something to take care of myself, but I don't know what it is yet. I just want something. And I just kind of put it out to the universe. I was like, this is a little woo for me, but I'm putting it out there because I need some help and I don't know what it's going to look like. And literally, it would have been 2 months later, I was with my daughter in the library and we were just browsing the kids section. And I rounded a corner, totally random. I never like browsed through the library. And I ended up in like a section I didn't recognize. And there was a book and it just kind of stood out to me. It was a beautiful orange color. And I just picked it up, I never, like totally out of character. I picked it up and it was something about like women's something of healing, blah, blah. And I am like science all the way, super not woo-woo. Something just, I feel like that day there was someone behind me directing me. And I picked up that book and I borrowed it just with my daughter and I started reading it and something started to click. It made sense to me. And I realized that what I thought was woo-woo, there's so much science there. So I started making some really basic changes based on what I was reading. I found a podcast. Eventually, I found a practitioner from an Ayurvedic background to work with, and I'll tell you a bit about what that is in a sec. But within 3 months, my skin cleared up. All the bloating went away. 6 months, I got so much of my energy back. Like I just felt a lot better. And all of that stress, same job. I didn't quit my job and go to India or anything. No, kept the job, had the mortgage. But just my capacity to deal with things. My basic mental stability really improved. 9 months later, I fell pregnant with my son. Easy pregnancy, amazing delivery, postpartum compared to my daughter, totally different. And here I am 8 years later. I feel better today, I'm turning 40 this year, than I did in my 20s.
Wow.
Yeah. And for the last 3 years, I've been helping people do exactly that.
And really it goes back to ancient ways of looking after
the
oneself.
wisdom. Yeah,
the wisdom.
That's right. A big part of what I've learned is, I love like reading about science, about health. Wellness is like my passion. And I've been in healthcare forever. I was a medical engineer, I worked in stem cells and orthopedics. Then I did my PhD in mental health and addiction. So I've always been in health. And I listen to all the podcasts, I read all the books, I hear about all the diets and all the new exercise things. But the thing that really, and I see it in my practice every day, our bodies are the product of millions of years of evolution. We are a technology in and of ourselves, an incredible technology. There is no machine out there that can do what your body can do. And I think what has been forgotten is the basic, sensible, practical things we need to do to take care of our bodies without all the noise. There's too much noise. And the stuff I do, I never shock anybody. I often say, I'm never going to be famous because the algorithm is never going to like what I say because there is no silver bullet. There is no one thing that's going to fix everything. It doesn't exist. But we must do the sensible things that people have done for thousands of years that somewhere in modern life has been lost. And that's basically what a lot of Eastern medicine is. So Ayurveda, and the easy way to say it is Ayurveda. I always think like that's how I talk about it. It's just a form of Eastern medicine. It is a philosophy. So just like Chinese medicine, a lot of these ancient medicines are like the wisdom of how we should live, and they are a little bit different, I guess, to conventional medicine because they take into account all parts of us. Everything is connected. Ayurveda comes from the same text as yoga and meditation. It's a healthcare system. There's surgery in there, there's like skincare in there, there's pregnancy medications in there, there are herbs. But what I take out of it, what I use is the gut health. For me, that has been the game changer. And today conventional medicine is getting there. The sciences are converging. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
So based on your experience, it all boils down to gut health.
I mean, I think so. There are a couple of things that are particularly relevant. I think, when we think about what is modern medicine and what is traditional medicine, right? So let's talk about it in the context of aging, right? So when we think about aging, like I will say, if I meet someone, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm turning 40 this year, blah, blah, that's my age. And then you look at me and they're like, oh, you're looking at me and like, does she look 40? So that is actually a great question to ask, because one of the things we think about when we think about aging is all the negatives. We're looking for the signs of aging, the symptoms of aging. And your chronological age, which is just the age you are in terms of the years since your birth, is supposed to be matched by how you feel in your body. And we think about aging as, oh, I'm growing older, so I have aches and pains. So I'm putting on weight around my middle. So I am not as flexible, compared to my 4-year-old son. Like, the way children move, I'm losing all of that. I'm getting a little bit forgetful. Now I leave my keys and I don't know where they are.
Or I can't read my book anymore.
I can't read my book
without
anymore.
glasses or without the glasses.
Yeah, or I smile and, oh, there's so many new lines on my face now. Okay. So we associate these things with chronological aging, right? And then we think, oh, so now, my mother had diabetes by the time she was in her 40s. My dad had hypertension by the time he was in his 40s. My grandmother developed dementia in her 60s. And I'm like, oh, this is my life now. It's all downhill from here. But if you've heard of the blue zones, so places in the world with the largest number of centenarians, so people living past the age of 100, and not just living, but living well. So they are mobile, they are healthy, they are contributing to society. I think that study has really opened up the idea about the fact that there is a science to aging, and there is a way that we can live that helps us thrive into old age. I'm less fussed about living many years. I'm more interested in living many good years, And there is no conversation about how to do that. We're just supposed to keep ticking on and just suffer more and suffer more and suffer more. And I'm like, no, that's because of my own experience and how I feel now compared to before. I feel very confident that, yes, I will age. We will all age. But how that's going to happen, I have a lot more choice than I initially realized.
That's also called active aging. We speak about that a lot and be proactive about your health.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting too about that blue zone study, and there is a documentary on it too, and it's just the areas of the world even, like from Japan to Loma Linda, California, like it's really phenomenal to say, well, hang on, how come it's these pockets? What are they doing in their lifestyle?
Well, sometimes it's environmental as well. People living in those little towns, they are very clean. Lots of walking up and down.
Yeah.
But obviously,
that's
vegetables
they eat
what you
seasonally.
eat, local produce and things like that.
And that's a lot of what I talk about with my clients.
Yes.
Really interesting to hear exactly what are those key concepts that we can take away and really start applying from today.
Yeah, that's right.
I also want to live well.
Yeah, and see, that's
But I'm also interested in longevity, not just quality.
That's right,
I want to get past 100. I don't know about you, but...
So I think the thing that I really work on, regardless of age, but especially with my clients who are in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, is so you have your chronological age, but what is your biological age? That's your functional age. So how is your body functioning relative to your age? You can be a chronologically aged 40-year-old, but maybe your biology is more like a 30-year-old, or it could be like a 50-year-old, right? So that's really more than, this idea. My mom was obsessed with anti-aging stuff. Like, she's 71 now. So, for the last 15 years, I have seen every kind of cosmetic product on my desk. And I'm like, oh my God, like, we're fighting nature. But, good aging is working with nature. It doesn't have to be that we don't grow old, but how we grow old really matters. And that is your biological age. So if we think about, so in my work, for example, the first place I look for to understand what someone's biological age is their gut health. You ask any carer what is the biggest challenge they and their client has, it's bowel movements. Nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody talks about it. But my first job, bowel movements. So going to the toilet every day, right?
Very important.
Very important. And it is actually the easiest and most direct indicator I use to assess someone's gut health. And it is a very good marker of age. So you think about babies. How many times have you changed a diaper? In one day, how many diapers are in the bag? But you know what that is? That is very good gut health. In, out, in, out. There is no residue, right?
Well, it makes sense. I mean...
Does that include the explosions up the bond switch?
Yeah, I mean, so I can help mums with kids with that kind of digestion fix it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
It makes sense. There's a philosophy that is all about start with the end in mind.
That's right.
Right? So it's really
The
exactly
very
when it starts from there. So
That's right.
it's all aligned.
Yeah, that's right. So I get to know my clients really well.
Okay.
Because,
Intimately.
Intimately, I ask a lot of questions about bowel movement. But it is...
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you think about growing old, it is the place people have trouble with. Constipation, irritable bowels, diarrhea,
Incontinence.
yeah, incontinence, bloating. All of these are the signs that your biological age is poor. And
Is poor.
Is poor. You should not, and I fix it really easily, but you should not have digestive issues. Digestive issues, because what's really happening is your greatest input into your body is through your mouth. Once it's in, there's really not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
It's important what we put in,
It
isn't
is
it?
so important.
Yeah.
And
We are what we eat.
You literally
right? That's
are.
what
That's
we eat.
right.
all about.
Garbage out, all of that.
That's right. And so if the garbage goes in, but if it comes out, and this is what I see with a lot of children, the harm is less.
Yeah.
But even if the good stuff goes in and it does not come out, what happens? Think about your garbage bin. Even the healthiest food, you leave it in there for 2 days, it smells
Stinks.
rank.
Yeah.
Same in your body. And that is the beginning of chronic inflammation, which, to answer your question, is the most important way to slow your health and your aging down. Inflammation is what is actually killing us. And in my work, so for example, I recently read a report, so the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, they do annual mortality trends. So, what are Australians dying of? What are we growing old from? And while most people at the end of life, right, we don't die from it, but most people who, especially if they're passing away before the age of 80, they have multiple chronic diseases. So they've got diabetes, they've got hypertension, they've got obesity, they've got high cholesterol, they've got heart disease. And now, even standard medical practice has recognized that all of these different diseases are contributing to the death. Yes, you may have died of the heart attack, but underneath that, the inflammation caused by all of these multiple factors has meant that your quality of life in the lead up to your death has been poor, maybe for 10 years, And these chronic diseases, they don't just stay, they get worse, and they get worse, and then you get put on medication. Now, one of the things I will say is we talk about chronic disease as if we inherit it. And I am going to suggest, from a holistic health point of view, you don't inherit anything.
It might increase your risk of getting
risk
something.
Is different, yes. But,
Yeah.
one of the lines I often say is the genetics may load the gun, but it is your lifestyle that pulls the trigger. Yeah?
Yeah.
And this is now, I'm not saying this from an Eastern medicine perspective, this is new medical technology showing it. So before I came to this line of work in gut health, I worked as an epidemiologist. So my job was basically to look at how environmental factors affected people's health. And I looked at it from the concept of mental health and addiction. But the greatest epidemiologist we have is our genes. Your genes are not set in stone. Yes, you have a set of genetics that comes from your parents, and maybe in there is a gene that puts you at greater risk of diabetes. But your environment, your epi, determines whether that gene gets switched on or gets switched off. This is now standard, well-accepted science. We have so much choice.
We have control.
So does that go for cancers as well?
Absolutely.
You believe you can switch it off?
I think there's less than 5% of chronic disease that is actually truly inherited. But even within that 5%, and there are a couple of cancers, so there are a couple of kinds of breast cancer and other cancers that have a very strong genetic link. But even there, it is not 100% set in stone. There is always a question, because we think of science as a black and white, but I'll tell you, as a scientist, I also worked as a statistician for a long time, even statistically, significance has a 5% margin of error. So we never 100% really know anything. You know, that is it's a myth of life, you know, like as a parent, you tell your kids, if you do this, you will fall down. You don't know. You're guessing. And we go through our whole lives guessing. And that's okay. That's the best we can do. But I feel like what the field of epigenetics has done is it's telling us about what Eastern medicine has always said, which is we have to make choices that create the best opportunity for us, because your genes are like, they're listening to you, you know, and we know now that one of the major causes of, a shortened lifespan is your genes, as we get older, they shorten. They actually shorten. And that is caused by inflammation, right? Long gene lengths are associated with a longer life. And before, we used to think that people who had long gene lengths were predisposed to a longer life. But now we know it's chicken and the egg. What caused the long gene length? Maybe
lifestyle and good food. And let's go back to that meat and potatoes conversation.
Well,
what makes a good gut health?
So let's start by saying that, okay, so let's go back to the conversation about inflammation, right? So what I'm looking for, so say I'm a carer and I walk into a house because I'm thinking about, you know, where is the opportunity here, right? If I walk into the home of somebody and I'm thinking, okay, so I know this person needs me now because their health is deteriorating, they need a little bit more support. I walk into the house and I'm like, okay, what am I looking for? So as a practitioner, the kind of things I'm looking for is I'm looking for the early signs of inflammation, right? And the things that people often don't think about in terms of inflammation is in the gut. So the first place I always ask, so anybody who comes to talk to me, gas, bloating, constipation, reflux, heartburn, loose stools, diarrhea, irritable bowel, 1 in 3 Australians has some symptom of gut issue. All of that speaks to underlying inflammation. And, you know, when you have that kind of inflammation here, it's just a matter of time before it starts to spill out, right? One of the most common things I see is people who go, oh, I'm growing older, I have a lot of aches and pains. What are aches and pains? What does that even mean? It's inflammation. It's swelling, it's redness, it's tension between the joints. All of that is a sign that there is some level of inflammation in the body, right? The other place where we often don't think about inflammation is in the head. Headaches, migraines, all of those things are inflammation too. For women, you know, so if there's one thing on social media recently that has been perimenopause, it has become the new disease. Women, like it's your menstrual cycle, there's always some woman-related disease, and we treat all parts of our lives, you know, getting your period, getting pregnant, after pregnancy, perimenopause, every part of our life is picked apart and treated like a great problem. I'm really bored of it. You know, our bodies, our reproductive systems, again, that technology is millions of years in the evolution. We have to trust it. We are supposed to change. We are supposed to adapt. You're not meant to feel the same way all through the 30 days of your menstrual cycle. That is the greatest myth of all time. And men are supposed to be able to understand that.
Yeah.
As I often tell my husband. But if we learn to live...
But men are the problem. Menopause, menstrual cramps.
Well,
All starts
the
with
biggest
men.
mystery.
The biggest mystery is a woman. Yes,
I'm just kidding.
But it's interesting because, so we function differently. Men are circadian. They follow a circadian cycle. Women are lunar. We follow a monthly cycle. And this is ancient wisdom. We used to accept the fact, you know, until, and I'll be a little bit controversial here, if you let me, when modern feminism came about and we decided that we should be equal, we forgot that we are different at a fundamental biological level. We just need to think about that a little bit, in the sense that, yes, I'm amazing, I've done lots in my life, I will do a lot, but if you catch me the 3 days before my period, I have to kind of spend that day a little bit more mindfully, just aware of how I feel. But if you catch me the 10th day of my cycle, oh, I can do anything. I'm like 3 people put together, right? So this is the difference, right? Whereas, you know, with men, because you follow a circadian cycle, it's very much about which time of day and how you feel at different times of day. And that is its own cycle too. So these are all the ways in which, you know, inflammation is linked to this, in the sense that for most of us, we don't follow any rhythm. We're just like, I'm like a robot, or like, I'm like my laptop. You switch me on and I'm on and I'm flatline. Switch me off and I just go off. This is one of the primary causes of inflammation.
Yeah.
We no longer live in any kind of cycle. We're not in tune with our bodies, and so we don't even understand that there's inflammation. So when I walk in, I talk to people and I'm like, how is your gut? Just tell me about what digestion is going on like for you. The second thing I ask is, any aches and pains, headaches, migraines, menstrual related issues, you know, do your knees hurt? You know, do your shoulders, do you feel tension over here? These are the first things I'm looking for to understand inflammation. The third thing I ask people about is how you're sleeping. If you're not sleeping well, you have inflammation. You cannot avoid it. So I have helped people fix insomnia that has required them to take sleeping tablets for years through gut health.
So what should you do to reduce this level of inflammation?
Oh, sorry, can we go one step before? So what causes the inflammation? Is it really diet? Is it...
Very good question. So there are 4 pillars that I work on consecutively, in the sense that you have to start with diet, absolutely. But diet, sleep, routine, and lifestyle, right? So this is why we are holistic, right? And I often tell people it's because, so in terms of diet, right? So let's start there. The thing that I feel is a common misconception that I made for a long time. So I've always been quite healthy, right? And this is why when I had all these health issues, I was just totally mystified. I'm like, I'm not eating like a junky diet. I exercise, you know, I take pretty good care of myself. Why is this happening to me? And the thing that really switched the game for me is when I came to Ayurveda and Eastern philosophy. Digestion is more important than nutrition, right? So we are all taught that you look at food as nutrition. Oh, it's a healthy plate. It's got, you know, the vitamins, the minerals, the protein, the blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I've got this plate of food in front of me. It's as high in nutritional value as I can get it. I'm going to eat that. But it is not what you consume. It is what you digest and absorb that really matters, right? And most people...
How do you know?
Sorry?
How do you know?
How do you know? So, so if you have a digestive issue, that is the first sign that whatever you're eating, you're not getting what you need out of it. You're absolutely not. The second thing is, so, you know, I used to eat a lot of salads. So again, I will be controversial. I know that, you know, raw food diets are popular and they work for some people. But if we think about the concept of aging, right? So as we get older, what happens is our digestive capacity changes. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. So like for me, I know this because my metabolism is different. I used to be able to have like a really big night out and I'll be hungover for like a day and then I'm okay. Now, 3 days, I feel horrible. It's like it just never ends. I wake up every day, I'm like, oh my God, I still feel awful. I still feel fuzzy. That's a sign that your body is changing. It's aging. And just your capacity to metabolize things, it's changing. And to some extent, that is just a matter of the fact, especially if you do rubbishy things like drink like there's no tomorrow. That's, you know. So
Like you feel it more, I guess.
You feel it more, yeah. Like if you have
like
a
when you were
Macca's,
younger, I suppose you get away with it.
You get away with it. That's right.
Now,
So it's the
it's just
same
like
as
you need
like
to be really careful.
You a little more careful, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you'll feel it as well. Like if you've been eating, and this is often what I tell people, especially into their 50s and 60s, you can't eat the same way you ate in your 20s as you get older, right? Part of that is because there is a natural slowing down of your digestion and metabolism, and there is lots you can do about that, but there is also the fact.
Natural.
Yeah, you know, it's like how if you had a car, when you first buy the car, that efficiency, over time, it does decline a little bit. So it's important to meet yourself where you are in life. And often when I'm working with people 50s, 60s, 70s, they're like, oh, you know, I've always eaten like this. And I'm like, yes, exactly. Maybe a couple of things need to change. The second thing is we need to look at inflammation, right? So if there is a gut issue, then you need to adjust your diet in such a way that you can first fix the gut issue. Fixing the gut issue is the key thing. And especially for people who are a little bit older, and if they don't have the gut efficiency, then take out the things that are difficult to digest. And one of the first things is raw food.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like the look of a big bowl of salad, nutritionally you're like tick, you know, and maybe you put a dressing on it, so it kind of, you know, I like the taste of it, great. But when you eat that, if you feel bloated, if you feel tired, or if in 1 hour you're in the pantry looking for a granola bar or a chocolate, you're not digesting that food. You got zero out of it. It's pointless. It just goes in and out. So rather work towards getting your digestion fixed and understanding how you can really eat foods that help you get the most energy out of it.
And what are those food?
So, for example, so it depends on your age. So here's where things get, you know, a little bit more specific. So one of the other things about, I feel like, generic medicine is there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all, right? For example, somebody who has no gut issues, no health issues, honestly, I say eat whatever you want. Whatever you're doing, it seems to be working. So that's fine. But depending on the kind of gut issue you have, then you need to think about what do I need to tailor. So compared to, for example, if you know, like if you go to your doctor and you go, oh, you know, I don't feel well, or I'm trying to take care of my health. Your doctor will probably say, okay, so go eat a balanced diet, get some exercise. But what I tend to do is I actually look at tailoring what they are eating to their needs. And this will soon become part of modern medicine. So if you've heard of the microbiome, so this is all about gut health. Your microbiome is basically the bacteria that sits in your gut that actually digests your food for you. You know, we think that like I am this body, this is me, but actually 150% of me is other things sitting in my gut, the bacteria in my gut. I'm actually the minority of what's in my body. The majority is this gut bacteria. And that gut bacteria is actually what helps us break down our food and convert it into energy, right? That gut bacteria is responsible for your immune system. Another thing that tends to go as we get older. You know, you're falling sick more often. You're getting pains more often. A lot of that is actually your immune response. And for a lot of people, the composition of that gut bacteria is different. It's where you live. It's what you eat, you know, and it's person to person. It actually varies. So in Eastern medicine, what we do is we understand. So I work with my clients to understand what are the gut issues that they are facing. You know, what do I think about the symptoms that are presenting? Is it sleep? Is it hormonal? Is it the hair, skin, and nails? Is it something to do with mental health? And based on that, we will tailor a diet and lifestyle that suits them. But the aim is always good gut health, right? And it's often people come and they're like, really? But I'm not even talking to you about a gut issue. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. But there is a gut issue. There always is a gut issue. And the thing I will say that I hope people really take on board, if you feel anxious, if you feel depression, if you feel constant low mood, if getting out of bed is trouble, get into your gut health. This is missing. It is a key part of what is missing in modern mental health. We think that the mind is there and the body is here. No. Have you felt your body? Yeah. It's like, and I think as women, we really feel this because in your menstrual cycle, your whole mind changes.
Yeah.
Yeah? So, if it's a nice, warm, summery day, your mind changes. If it's a cold, miserable, wet day, what is your mood? How are those things so different?
So in practical terms, that you mentioned about digestion, right? So I'm thinking warm food,
Yeah, that's right.
olive oil,
Yeah, so there are a
thinking
couple of
about
things. Maybe what I'll do is
unprocessed food. Is that what I'm
unprocessed food. Absolutely.
talking about here?
So
Yeah.
there's nothing to begin with for most people. I think the high level stuff that anybody can do, whole foods. We live in the chemical age. We
So
really
anything that is not
Prepackaged.
processed.
Yeah, that's right. And I have a fortnightly newsletter and a blog, and the next one coming out lists the 5 most common chemicals that we don't even know are in our food. Okay? One of those that really, when I found out about this, really shocked me is when you buy like a sandwich or a banh mi, you buy a roll. You know how those carrots, they're so orange. The carrots that come in a sandwich are so orange. So last year I was working with someone in the food industry, and it turns out that when you buy your carrots from a Whole Foods distributor, you can choose to buy whole carrots and then grate them on site, but obviously that's labor intensive and it takes a lot of time. So a lot of places will allow you to buy pre-grated carrots. But what happens when we grate carrots in the morning? By afternoon, what
They
does
go
it look
brown.
like? Yeah, they're not
Start to
so beautiful.
decompose. Yeah.
They're decomposing because that's what good food does. It breaks down quickly. That's how you digest it. But from a consumer's point of view, we don't like this anymore. We like perfection. We like things to be beautiful all the time, right? That's
So
why
that's processed.
It's like when you get those dodgy bananas or avocados and apples, and they just don't.
They never
start to
break
rot.
down.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
and you're
I don't wanna eat
why?
that.
So these carrots, for
Yeah.
example, they are passed through sulfur water.
Yeah.
And the sulfur is like a embalming agent, let's call it. And it's
And
not
it's not good for you.
sulfur, So again, like that kind of a wash. And the problem is, I think we rely on external agencies to make the decision about what's toxic and what's not. The issue with that is when these things are tested in the lab, they're tested once. But if you eat those things every day, you are accumulating a certain amount of toxins in your body. And, your body can digest the banana. It doesn't know how to digest these things. These are chemicals.
And
They
a
are
lot of
new
dried
things.
fruit is sulfur.
That's
based.
right.
You know,
That's
your
right.
apricots and apples, and
Yeah.
we
They're
feed them to our
preservatives.
kids thinking they're healthy.
They're healthy.
Yeah, anything
So-
that is processed, you need to think about that. It's
What
not
have they
good.
done to
it's
it?
not good for you.
Yeah.
That's right. So, we never used to eat like this. Like, if I think about
Yeah.
my grandmother, she walked to the market, she bought the fruit and veg, she came home, she cooked it. It was not exciting. The food
Yes.
was pretty
Or
generic.
they
Yes.
grew it.
Or they
Or they
grew
grew
it.
it
She had a
themselves.
garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's actually the best food ever.
Yeah, that's right.
Fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you appreciate it because
You
you've
know,
done it.
There's
slow
effort
cooking
involved.
times,
Yeah.
cook it quick.
Yeah, that's right, And it doesn't have to be, and this is where I like this idea that we go back to basics, because on the other hand, many of my clients, they come to me with gut issues from trying a fancy diet. Keto, paleo, no sugar, no fat, no carbs. They've taken something complicated that was always in our diet out, and they're grumpy. Because, when you miss something that you love, you get grumpy, right? The second thing is all of these things have a function in your digestion. All of them are necessary. That's why every traditional diet from anywhere in the world, if you look at the plate, there are things in common. They have all of these functional bits to them. All of those things were there for a reason. And when you take them out, you lose things. So,
So you need diversity. You need to eat a bit of everything.
Yeah, and you don't want to really, don't exclude things from your diet. So it's become very...
They have a purpose.
Yeah, they all had a purpose. And today, for various reasons, we have chosen to take key things out of our diet, So, for example, we've taken fat out of our diet. Like I was born in the 80s. I remember in the 90s, everything was fat-free, right? Like you could get fat-free anything. And my family, we got into like fat-free or low-fat milk and stuff like that. Now we know fat is essential. Good quality fat is essential. And I often tell people, where we need fat the most? Your brain. Your brain is a fatty organ. It requires fat to function. Your entire nervous system is coated in a layer of fat. And many older people, a lot of these neurological, so dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, those are neurological conditions that come sometimes because they are the people who've tried to, oh, I'm getting to middle age, I'm putting on weight, I'm just going to take everything, all the fat out of the diet. And what do you see? You see neurological problems happening because good fat is not something that makes us put on fat. That's that's metabolic issues.
And is it also because it's been processed? For example,
That's right.
fat-free milk,
That's right.
rice skinny milk, is it
It is
more processed, isn't it?
And in a lot of cases, fat gives us, it's delicious. Come on, let's not kid ourselves.
Palatable.
It's palatable. Full fat milk gives us satiation. You take that out, people don't like the taste, so they add sugar back into low-fat milk.
Yes.
Again, the three whites, right? There's the sugar, salt, and white flour, right?
And then
All
add
of these three
everything to
elements.
fortify it.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Same with the nut milks and things.
Yeah, that's
Can I ask
right.
a question in relation to all of that? The other thing, and I come from a Christian worldview, so very similar to what you're talking about. It's nature, creation,
That's
all
right.
of that. The other thing I think that we miss is that because of the way we export things worldwide and we grow different things in different countries, even, I guess, in Australia, we look at the climate between, say, Queensland and Victoria, where we're going cold to warm. We've got seasons. We've got fruit and vegetables that grow in certain seasons, in certain climates for a reason. Do you think there's something in that too, that perhaps we're consuming things out of season, out of climate?
Absolutely. You're spot on. And that's a big thing that I talk to people, again, high level, just eat seasonally. And I share your view. I'm a person of faith as well. And I feel like what we have forgotten is to respect nature. We are part of that. Your microbiome changes with the season intentionally. So my daughter has a real penchant for cherry tomatoes. And we always go through this process of having an argument in autumn about how, honey, the cherry tomato season is over. Can we move on to something seasonal just because you like them?
And how do you
doesn't mean
explain
get
that to
them.
someone when they walk in the supermarket and they're there?
They see them, yeah. So what I did was, we actually planted a cherry tomato tree in my garden so that we can watch how this plant lives through the years. And so I asked her, so how do you think we are growing these tomatoes in the middle of this climate? And we actually Googled it and got into where does the food come from? How do we create artificial climates? When you create an artificial climate, what other things have to come in? Because I will say that the other big problem we have in terms of chemicals is pesticides and herbicides. They're ruining everything and they kill off a lot of the good bacteria in our gut.
So organic food as much as possible.
Yeah, as much as possible. And look, I know it's hard and I fully appreciate that it's expensive. But the good thing is, so you can look at lists. So there is the Dirty Dozen, which is available in most places, which talks about which foods you really should be buying organic. And the thing I tend to do is anything that grows above ground, especially if it's leafy, so your leafy greens, those things get sprayed directly and then we eat them, right? The other thing is berries. So your strawberries, your blueberries, your raspberries, again, those things should be eaten seasonally.
Broccoli too, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So if we have to educate ourselves as consumers because, again, you just don't digest it. And it all comes down to digestion. Those things sit in your body. Your body doesn't know what to do with them because we have an incredible digestive system. But it's for food. It's not for this stuff.
The chemicals.
So almost we need to have like a cheat sheet on all the food that are seasonal and trying to incorporate that into your diet.
That's right. And
based
it's
on the
great
season.
because in Victoria there are so many resources. So I use just a website. So Ceres, which is our local growers resource, they just have a list of like, local seasonal fruit and veg. And like when I have the time, I'll sit down with my daughter. She's almost 9 now. And I'll be like, okay, you can pick one thing. So to replace these cherry tomatoes that are apparently missing from her life. Like, what's the other thing we can pick from this list that you like that can replace this for this season? Because we need to, so the baby boomer generation, I think, they discovered technology, right? And they discovered that we can really change the world to suit our needs. I think our generation are beginning to realize that you can't change the world that much because we're part of it. And our children need to be the generation who help us fix things.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that, yes. But we need to educate them and teach them. And one of the things we have to teach everybody, I feel, and it's a big part of my work, is you can't always get what you want. This is a fact of life. And in every sense of the word, we are happier, more resilient people when we can accept a situation for what it is.
Yeah.
And maybe that is a nice way to get into the other thing I do, which is mental health. So the beauty of our body, to me, especially coming from a mental health background, one of the things I did when I came to this method, this Eastern philosophy, is I got into meditation. And I tell you, it has changed my whole life. Fundamentally changed it. And I will say that it's great that it's helped my health. And, there are a million apps that will tell you, if you do this, your stress will go down. And if you do that, you have all these biological benefits. And I think that's a great reason to start. That's why I started. I was like, it's not because I want to find some divine connection. I need to fix my health. That's why I got into it. But the thing that I have experienced now, 8 years of doing it, is, a lot of the time when we're in a difficult situation, you're in stress, you're in grief, you're going through a hard time, we have an enormous capacity to deal with things. We have incredible resilience.
It's all in us.
It is in us. There is nothing out there that can really fix what's wrong. It is all in here. And most of us can go through our whole lives never tapping into this. We're always looking for something on the outside, a food, a holiday, a relationship, a something, some money to heal the balm, to be the balm. The balm is inside. And I think, if we think about what aging looks like, so one of the tragedies of aging is it's associated with an increased risk of depression, of isolation, of this feeling of not having a purpose anymore. And so investing earlier in our lives in something that fills us up, in some sense of connection, in taking care of our mental health, our soul, sets you up for a life where your whole biology, your physiology is different. That's one of the things I took from the Blue Zones. There is so much community. They are all people who have some kind of faith. They have some sense of connection. There is purpose, and they are tough people. They live in difficult places in the world. I can't remember, was it Sardinia, where basically the reason was they were cut off from the whole world because the terrain was so hard, no one could get there.
Yeah, really elevated.
Yeah, you would think people there would die quick. That's a hard place to live. But yet, the resilience of the people, this idea that we have to make our lives so cushy that we're happy is actually absolutely false.
Yeah.
We have enormous capacity. And I also say that because when we look at the problems of the world, we are the ones who will fix them. But we have to be strong enough to be willing to make certain somewhat uncomfortable changes to be able to do that. We can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And we don't change until we get so uncomfortable that we need to.
Well, that's what happened to me.
You've just got to. Yeah, and I was similar. I had a very big. I actually ended up having a heart condition that I had a procedure for too. But for years was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and I had the same thing. You go to the doctor, they give you a mental health plan, they try and put you on anti-anxiety medication. You go through all the stuff with the psychologist, and I'm a counsellor by trade, so I already knew some of those things. But I was similar to you. Went on that journey with health and looking into, well, what are all the lifestyle factors? What am I thinking? What's my spirituality like? Am I exercising? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting sunshine? Am I doing all of that? And I think if we don't pay attention, I think you're absolutely spot on, Dhanya. If we don't, we get into a mess.
Yeah.
Because we're part of the world and the universe and all of those things. And if we're putting things into our body that our body needs, and even our chemical composition as human beings correlate with natural food, natural environment, our atmosphere, our five senses, what goes in, out, round about.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful.
It's all connected.
Yeah, that's
The connection to nature is vital, isn't it?
I mean,
It
We
helps
are
you be
organic.
more grounded.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
are, we are as organic as it gets. We may sit in front of technology, but you are just like the cherry tomatoes growing under the sun on a beautiful day.
In relation to the mental health, I think that's very applicable because, as someone who is caring for someone else, they often put other people first. We've talked about that a lot in other podcasts. They, looking after other people first so they don't look after themselves.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about meditation, looking for other things. Anything else further in terms of the mental health space?
Yeah.
What can a carer do
To take care of
to
themselves.
take care of themselves?
Self-care.
Self-care, yeah. So I think the other thing that, I often think about as someone who cares for my family, for example. And when I'm working with clients, you develop a sense of attachment to people. And I care about the people I work with as well. Taking care of yourself, especially, I think mothers always need to hear this. Taking care of yourself is the most powerful thing you can do to care for somebody else, because your energy is what everybody around you experiences first.
Absolutely.
That's
Can't fill
so
from an
true.
empty cup.
Yeah, you
isn't
can't
it?
fill from an empty cup. And for most of us, I think we look at caring for others as like the things you do for them. But what if part of that was also you being a certain kind of person? There's something really amazing about spending time with someone who just exudes this great energy. It's like having a mentor or somebody you hang out with who just kind of makes you feel calm, makes you feel positive, makes you feel grounded just by who they are. I feel like that is almost 50% of what caring is. It's why many of us associate, for example, for me, my grandmother who recently passed away. She was not a very educated woman. She was not a highly skilled woman. She was my grandma. But she was the calm, sweet, stable, always kind of there, always steady in life, like the anchor.
Yeah.
And that is so healing. And that's why I always tell people, if there's something you want to do that can fundamentally change the world, be your best in every sense of the word. Your happiest, healthiest self is like a balm that helps everybody.
Yeah.
And that's why investing in really taking care of the pillars that make you your best self, it changes things. For me, like on a bad day when I haven't been good with myself, I'm reactive with my kids. I'll argue with my husband. I'll have a client and I'm not really there. Like I'm only 50% doing my job because I'm kind of spaced out. So I think that's often what's missing from the conversation. And breathe. If there's the other pillar that I feel in mental health, we often think, so one of the signs that I look for in terms of inflammation and anxiety is this.
Is it shallow?
Short, sharp breaths high up in the chest, right? Especially because we spend a lot of time seated. You actually can't breathe deeply when you're sitting. So your lungs, we think about our lungs as being in the front, but they're actually mostly at the back of the body. And they are quite long, and they actually go down to your middle back, right? So your lung, and one of the chronic inflammation signs that I often see in older people is they lose lung capacity. You get fluid in the lungs, you get bronchitis. This is a sign that things are failing in the body. But there's a lot you can do for your lung health. Learning to, and exercise is a great example, because when you exercise to a point, you are using your lung capacity. But honestly, like I'm not a runner. I was never that person. Like Khadi and I am like, I like to walk, but I don't like pushing myself. But what I do is I do breath work every day. And I teach breath work as well. And you sit down, but you use your lungs and you mimic the experience of athletic work. And that actually can completely change your lung function and capacity, right? And so from a carer's perspective, if there's one thing, I can think of that is a great tool to assess inflammation is if you meet an older person who is breathing through their mouth, they have inflammation.
Breathing through the mouth.
Breathing through the mouth. Mouth breathing is associated with a whole range of chronic diseases. And it is a sign of cognitive decline. And I see it a lot in older people, a lot. And I don't think they realize they're doing it. Often when I'm working with someone and I'm like, you need to just start breathing through your nose. They're like, what do you mean? Of course I breathe through my nose. And I'm like, I'm watching you.
And you're not.
And you're not breathing through your nose. And so snoring and sleep apnea, which are common as we get older, a lot of that is just you're not paying attention to where you're breathing from.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Your mouth was only meant for food
Yeah.
and talking. But a lot of us, I don't know what it is. And what I notice is people who sit a lot start breathing through their mouth. I think because they're not getting into their lungs enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a really common cause of inflammation.
Yeah.
So, and again, like I'm not a prescriptive person, which is why everybody gets a different personalized plan because it has to work for you. I'm more interested in you being consistent.
Yes.
Rather than achieving 100% perfection. I drink coffee, I love a glass of wine, I travel. I'm not leading this perfect lifestyle by a long way. But I know the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And when you have the fundamentals in place, even if you go off a little bit, you know how to come back.
Yes.
That's
Right.
important.
Small refinements, adjust your trajectory in life. It, a long run, it makes a huge difference, right?
Absolutely.
Like small little refinements.
Absolutely. And, for example, recently I read a study, and this was, mainstream, like it was MGA, so the Medical Journal of Australia, that said that they've done work looking at longevity and aging. And if you had a poor diet and lifestyle, but you changed it at 40, which we would say, oh, that's quite late, you can add up to 8 years of healthy life,
Wow.
which can be the difference between 80 and 88. That's significant.
It really is.
So I felt really good. I was like, oh, this is great news. It's never too late. It's never too late.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hope that we need.
Yes.
We don't need to sit on the back seat and feel like everything is predetermined. There's nothing I can do. There's always things you can do.
And back to your point, I'm guessing it can go even the other way around. So at 40, if you start with the bad lifestyle and eating, really bad, you can actually lose another 8 years, right? I'm guessing.
Absolutely.
So
But I
you're going back
wonder-
to 72.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Which is, so look at our power. How much choice do we have? We think that life is going, but it's not, to me, like one of the words of wisdom in my old age. I'm starting to tell younger people. So, if I have a client in their 20s, for example, I say, if you worry less about where you are going and you concentrated more on how you are going as you get there. So just taking care of yourself, consistently taking care of yourself, then you can be assured that whatever happens, you are able to deal with it.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
No,
Yeah,
that's true.
because I remember, like, especially in academia, we're always asked, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Will you be a professor? Blah, blah, blah. And I used to sit there and stress out so much. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. But now if somebody asks me that, where are you going to be in 5 years? I said, I don't know, but I'm sure that I'm going to be my best self so that whatever situation I'm in 5 years, I can handle it.
Yeah.
It's a different way.
important.
One
It's a
step at
different
a
way.
time.
Yeah, one step at a time,
No, I love that. So, if you were to summarize all of this, wealth of knowledge, how should we do a bit of a quick recap? I found it fascinating to just listening to you and soaking in all your knowledge. It's been really, really inspiring. It was great, the gut health.
The gut health. I think that's
back
the
to
key. Going back to the gut health.
Absolutely.
So
It helps all everything else, right? Seems like even your mental health and start with the end in mind, and as we said before, looking at bowels movement and yeah. Should we do a bit of a recap?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, why don't you guys tell me? So that's what struck you. What about you, Giselle? What's the thing that really...
I think as well, the gut health. So, if you feel like if you're feeling generally unwell, in pains or your bowel movements, headaches, you can always try and fix it by what you put in, how you digest. So you're chewing well, warm foods, eating seasonally, so forth, doing all those things that we hear about so often, don't we? Hear about all these types of things, but actually putting it into practice.
Absolutely.
I think that's the key.
Implementation, yeah. And that's why I coach people, because I remember what it was like when I started. it's hard. Like you've got a million things going on, and like chewing your food and remembering what's seasonal. Like, oh my god, it got lost in the bigger scheme of things.
Absolutely.
And so like 50% of the job is the information, but the other 50% is providing support.
Yes.
You know, so absolutely.
Can be tough.
Can be tough. What
How
about
about
you,
you?
Danny?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely inflammation. And because it's just, like you said, it's under everything, you know, arthritis and cancer and our gut health, all of that, and the holistic lifestyle stuff around that to just get us back into that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's what even more inspiring to me is that all of these things are under our control, and the choice we make every day.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's, you know, and the thing about that is it then changes the brain. It changes how we look at things. So
Yeah, you feel you're more responsible, you're more empowered.
That's right. And that's why I feel like this is a very empowered form of healthcare. You know, as opposed to sitting there waiting to be told what's wrong with me, what medication do I need, and then go off and this is life now. You know,
Accepting that.
accepting that.
Yeah.
And I'm married to a doctor, so I'm very conscious that the mainstream healthcare system has done many good things. Like if I broke a bone, I would definitely go to him and get that fixed. And there is a place for that. But I think where people should look outside of that box is for longevity, is for natural solutions. And, you know, I often think you don't need to choose. You can do both. It's kind of depends, you know, it can be both. And that's why I come from mainstream healthcare and I still found this stuff really applicable. And I think, like, you know, a big part of my job is finding the in-between where, you know, I'm not interested in this or that. I'm interested in what will help, you know. And embracing your body as a relationship. Your first relationship is actually with yourself. And all the other relationships in your life are just a reflection of your relationship with yourself. You know, and that's the big mental health component. But I will say, your gut health is everything. It is just so important because when I think about mood and, like, you know, when I'm, you know, you have a really bad day, the first thing I'll do is go, what have I eaten in the last 24 hours that might just be making me feel a little bit off? And often there will be something in there, something that I've done that just didn't suit me at that place at that time. And on a really good day where I go, oh, I feel really good today, I'm like, what happened today? What did I eat? Like, what was my routine? Because it is not just, so it's diet, it's sleep, it's routine, and it's lifestyle. And maybe the last thing to finish up with that I thought was interesting is, you know, as we get older, we actually lose taste buds. The great tragedy. I know. I remember, like, when I was studying this, I thought, oh, that is really sad. That's why our children are such fussy eaters. They, like, broccoli tastes weird. The kale is like, yuck, it's so bitter. And then as an adult, you're like, I can eat healthy now because I can eat all these foods. But actually, we've lost taste.
Interesting.
And, and so as we get older, we continue to lose this, right? Some of that, and again, there's two parts to it. Some of it is true. We do actually, our sensitivity to taste does decline with age. But the other half of it, which I think is interesting, is your gut. The situation of your gut, especially if there's inflammation, alters your taste buds.
Oh, goodness.
And so, you know, when you meet people who, like, I'm just thinking about a carer who's trying to talk to a client about their diet. And the client goes, no, but I really like that because your food tastes really bland to me.
Yeah.
It's very common. Right? And some of that is true, but some of it is because they've had inflammation for so long that they need that amount of salt and sugar to taste anything.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that is if they are willing to go there, your taste can change. Because when you clear the gut out, you resensitize your tongue.
Wow.
Interesting.
And so, just like at the beginning when we talked about the bowel movements, which nobody likes to talk about, one of the things I do in an assessment is I look at people's tongues.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? Because by looking at someone's tongue, and this is from Eastern medicine, and Chinese doctors do it as well, we get a sense of what the rest of your digestive tract looks like, because this is the beginning of your digestive tract, right? And often if you see, and this is something anyone listening can do, if you have a good look at your tongue and you see a coating on your tongue, a white coating, a yellow coating, a gray coating, or there are red spots on the tongue, you're not tasting your food, because there is something impeding the process, the connection between your food and your taste buds. And that is actually a gut issue.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is something to end with. A little bit interesting.
How much have we
Digest
learned?
all of that.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know what's
It's a lot
funny?
to digest.
When you talked about the kids and they can taste the, even more like stronger feel of the food. Imagine what it would taste like to eat, lollies and sugar and
yeah.
bickies, all this sort of
Exactly
stuff. That's why
right.
they're so addicted, I think, right? Because
Exactly right.
it must taste so good. They want it so much. Imagine.
I remember my daughter when she was about 9 months old. We went to Queenscliff and had an ice cream, and my grandmother gave her first taste of strawberry ice cream.
She went banana.
And she's like, oh, my grandma's trying to take it back. She's, I just would not let her have it. She ended up finishing off the whole
That
thing.
makes sense. That
Wow,
makes
it does
sense.
make sense now.
Yeah.
They taste better.
Everything
better than what
tastes.
we...
Yeah, and that's the danger, because
Yeah.
you start kids early,
Yes.
you get them hooked,
Yes.
and then they associate it with that whole experience, right? So I have these difficult conversations with my children all the time about sweets and sugar and all of it, and I will cave, often, but I continue to reinforce the idea, just like I do with adults, that those are treats. They're not for every day.
Sure.
They are, and I don't just say that. I tell
That's
them
a good tip.
it's-
Yeah.
you
Just
know.
something quick and
Yeah.
temporarily.
And at the end of the day, like most parents will say, "Oh yeah, but it's not affecting them." Trust me, it's affecting them. And it's just that, like most things, it accumulates,
Yeah.
and then it's only when they're older you start to see the effects. Because I work, with 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds sometimes, around their health. And I am very convinced that the reason why we're seeing a lot of younger people with mental health issues is because of the diet. I didn't have, when I was growing up, like in Malaysia in the 80s, snacks were like not a thing. It was hard
meals.
to, it was meals.
Main
It was
meals.
meals, and like my mom never, when we went to the park, she didn't carry food with her. We just went to the park. And if I was hungry, she said, "You're going to have to wait till lunch."
Mm.
And
There you
today
go.
we have a real snack culture.
Yeah.
Snacking is probably the
That's
single biggest problem. that
100%.
contributes.
Yeah, we can open another chapter on that.
Yeah, for another time. But
Yeah.
But
that's-
100%, I'm with you.
Yeah. And that's why, even people who are on like healthy diets where they're eating 6 meals a day, I'm like, well, I'm not sure about that.
Not
Just
giving
from a digestive
Yeah,
perspective.
not giving it
It's
much
like
rest.
running your car all the
Yeah.
time.
So you think it's a myth eating often and small portions?
So again,
it's a fine balance.
It's a fine balance because it has to be tailored for the individual. If
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
bodybuilding and preparing to be
For
in
sure, every
competition,
2-3 hours proteins, yeah.
yeah, that's different. But for the average person I work with, for me, like in my life, and I exercise every day, but for 45 minutes to an hour, I don't need that.
that
And
makes
at the end,
sense,
and as we get older and our efficiency declines, then that's why eating like that in your 20s, okay, maybe. Eating like that in your 40s and 50s, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
point.
wow. So many golden nuggets there. Wonderful.
Maybe I'll stop there. Just like, we'll all digest this.
Let's say that, finish on that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was
my
very
pleasure.
inspirational and
My pleasure.
so good. I look forward to rewatching this session and taking notes, but it's great.
And putting it all into practice.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's right.